I was having a good time with AP, but my husband followed me and caught me in the act.
One night, he decided to follow me and caught me red-handed. He made sure I'll regret this forever. Hey, fellow Redditors, I am facing quite a dilemma here, and I really need your input and guidance. I never thought I would find myself in a situation like this, but life can be pretty unpredictable, right? So, here goes nothing. I am Stella, 26F, and have been in a steady relationship with my boyfriend Drew, 29M, for the last 2 years. I would believe that my relationship with Drew initially was all a bed of roses until the honeymoon period was over, and reality hit us. We had bills to pay, and love was not the only thing that could help us with everything. We decided to take our careers seriously to help us with our expenses. Drew had landed a new job which required him to be available even on his days off. This started causing a distance between me and him. I did understand that it was his job and there was nothing he could do about his long and erratic work hours, but it was not easy to live with the fact that he would have to leave in the middle of a date if he got a call. I would make plans with him for the weekend and we would be having a good time, and suddenly he would get a call and leave because it was a new job, and he wanted to make a good impression. Most of our plans of hanging out or spending quality time had been going down the drain ever since he got this job. There were times that I would feel that he should quit, but I am not going to lie. The money was great, so I never brought up the suggestion of him quitting. I had a decent job myself, which paid enough to pay for my own share of expenses. However, the money that came through his job would pay for all our extracurricular activities, such as going out to parties or movies or a mini weekend trip. We were planning to save enough money through Drew's job so that we could buy a new house and move into it. Our plan was that he would continue working at this company for the next 2 years, so that we save enough money for the down payment and furniture, and then think of finding a more stable job which had fixed work hours. We were determined to make sacrifices and prioritize our long-term goals. It was crucial for us to establish a strong financial foundation before we start a family. It had been 1 year since Drew had been slogging off at his job. The good part of it was that he recently got a raise of 30%, which was something we hadn't accounted for. This could only mean that we would be able to buy a house faster than we expected and move into it as soon as we had enough for the down payment. Me and Drew sat down one day and were discussing our future when Drew told me that he would want to continue with his job since he would not be getting anywhere close to this amount of money if he switched jobs. I had no idea what exactly he did in his job, but I knew that he was just making up an excuse to not leave his current job because he must have gotten comfortable in it. I did not try to argue with him about it, but I was not very happy with this decision, as we had already decided that he would be leaving his job after 2 years. I did not share my concerns with Drew and decided to keep it to myself for now. I would be able to reason with him once I had a logical explanation or a better job offer for him. I decided to hunt for a job for him on my own and then talk to him about it. I was very disturbed since the conversation I had with Drew about not quitting. I wanted him to know that I had been feeling very lonely, as he being unavailable was playing with my mental happiness. The only hope I had was that it would all be over after a year, and now he throws a bomb at me about not quitting. It was stressing me out, so I decided to go out to divert my mind. I went to catch up with my friends at a club and try not to think about Drew and his job and everything else that had been bothering me lately. I was here to have a good time, and I was determined to do that. I started drinking, dancing, and catching up with everyone. When I was on the dance floor, I saw someone stealing glances at me. He did not look so bad, so I winked at him just to look at his reaction. He was shocked by my boldness and started walking towards where I was dancing. I quickly made my way towards the restrooms so that I wouldn't attract attention from my friends. As expected, he followed me, and once we were away from everyone's eyes, I checked him out from top to bottom and gave him an approving look. I don't know what came over me, because when he leaned over and kissed me, I actually enjoyed it. After the kiss, I quickly scanned our surroundings to see if any of my friends had witnessed this. All of my friends were good friends with Drew, and I knew that they were going to rat on me to Drew about it. I quickly grabbed his hand, took up my lipstick, and wrote down my number on his arm and went back to the dance floor. I joined my friends and we had a good time, and then said our goodbyes and took a cab home. On the way home, I pulled out my phone to see a few messages from an unknown number. I opened them up and saw that they were from the guy that I had kissed earlier. He wanted to meet me tomorrow, if it was possible, at a place and time of my choice. I kept reading that message over and over and kept blushing like a schoolgirl who just received a text from her crush. It has been 6 months since I have been having an affair with Liam. He was sweet, cute, and always made time for me whenever I needed someone to talk to. Every day after work, I would meet up with Liam at a nearby cafe. We would have coffee and discuss our life plans. It all started very innocently, and I don't know how it escalated into a full-blown affair. Drew being away from home played a big deal in pushing me towards having an affair. I could see that my relationship with Drew was going nowhere as we hardly spoke to each other. On the other hand, Liam would listen to all my stupid problems and showed keen interest in everything that I would narrate to him. I could clearly see a stark difference between Drew and Liam and the way they treated me. It was the weekend, and as usual, Drew was not at home as he had some urgent work to finish. I took advantage of this opportunity and asked Liam to meet me at our usual spot. Liam told me that he had some family commitments, so he could only make it at night. I did not have any issues with that because I was very sure that Drew would not be back until tomorrow. I told Liam that we would be spending the night together. I got ready and went to the hotel and took the keys to our room. We always met at the same hotel and booked the same room to avoid any complications and running into people that might know us. I put on my sexy lingerie and waited for Liam to have a wonderful night together. After 10 minutes, there was a knock on the door and I knew that it would be Liam. I rushed to the door and opened it, hiding behind it so as not to reveal what I was wearing. He got inside and I closed the door behind him. I could tell that he was speechless when he noticed what I was wearing. I slowly lifted my head to look at his reaction, and I was shocked to see Drew in front of my eyes instead of Liam. I did not know how to react or what to say because there was no way out of this situation. I was caught red-handed, and I knew in that instant that I messed up big time. Drew had a mix of emotions in his eyes ranging from anger to sadness to disappointment. I could tell that he was hurt, as he was not expecting me to betray him this way. I stammered to try and get anything out of my mouth, but words wouldn't make their way out. He just left, and his eyes filled with tears kept dancing in front of my eyes. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see the look on his face, which was making it difficult for me to even think about what to do next. Liam came over after 30 minutes and was shocked to see me all teary-eyed and wrapped in the blanket. I hugged and cried inconsolably, telling him everything that had happened. He told me that it was all right and suggested that I should stay over in the hotel tonight. I could go back home tomorrow when Drew would be out for work and take my belongings and leave. I thought that was the best option we had so far and agreed to it. We slept at the hotel the entire night, forgetting about Drew and making love to each other. Liam told me that we were celebrating my freedom as I don't have to be scared of Drew finding out about the affair anymore. We got up the next morning and drove to the house. I did not see Drew's car, so I assumed that he might be at work, so I sneaked inside to pack my stuff. I unlocked the door and went straight to the bedroom and started to look for a bag where I could put in my stuff. As I was rummaging through my wardrobe, I saw Drew walk out of the toilet, so I froze. He came towards me, gave me a smile, and hugged me. To my surprise, Drew held my hand and walked me to the bed and asked me to sleep beside him. I did not know what to do, so I decided to play along. We both lied down, hugging each other, and he told me that he was sorry for making me feel lonely and not being available. He also said he would do anything that would make me happy, even if it meant leaving his job that paid for the maximum of our expenses. I was very surprised at his reaction because the Drew I know would have created havoc after he found out that his girlfriend was cheating on him. This was something unusual, but he looked so sincere when he was saying those words that I did not even once doubt him. In my head, I was making up my mind if I should stay with Drew or leave with Liam. Liam was unemployed and searching for a job, whereas Drew was well established and he had a ton of money. Though Drew was always busy with work and gave me little time, Liam was always available as he had nothing to do and nowhere to go. To be very honest, love is just not enough in the real world, as you need money to pay your bills, pay for your expenses, and also any kind of activities and hobbies that you would want to spend on. It was very clear in my head who I would want to stick with. I slowly pulled out my phone from under the sheets and sent a quick text to Liam that, "I'm very sorry. I truly love Drew and I cannot leave him." I also thanked him for keeping me company all the while when Drew was away, and I was grateful for the good times that we had shared. I told him not to contact me anymore, as I would want to try and build my relationship with Drew. I know that all you guys might be thinking that I am such a gold digger, but to be very frank, if you were in my position, you would have done the same, and I would not judge you for it. I put my phone away and hugged Drew tightly as if I was letting go of Liam and the affair behind me. We had a long and emotional conversation about trust, boundaries, and communication. We both acknowledged that what happened was unhealthy and recognized that we have both made mistakes in this relationship. We both wanted to work on these issues because deep down, we truly cared about each other. In a few months' time, we pooled in enough money to pay for the down payment. We leased the place we were living at and were packing up stuff to move into our new house. I was so excited about it, and the affair with Liam looked like it happened in a different era altogether. Life could not have been any better. When it was time to leave, Drew, as usual, got a call and asked me to go ahead and promise to join me for the unpacking. I kissed him and drove off enthusiastically, unable to wait moving into our new house. I went to the location and saw that there was an old broken-down house and the neighborhood looked quite shady. I was confident that we were in the wrong place. This was not the house that we had shortlisted. I tried calling Drew, but it kept reaching his voicemail. I asked the truck driver to contact his company as there had been a mistake in the address. He told me that he had double-checked and we were in the right place. He told me that he needed to unload and leave as he had other places to be. When he started getting things out of the truck, I noticed that it had only all the old furniture that we decided to discard. I called the movers to complain about the mix-up and that they had picked up the wrong items to be moved. It was of no help, and I had no choice but to wait for Drew to come and sort this out. I decided to wait in that shady house for Drew and left him lots of voicemails to let him know that this was urgent. It had been more than 4 hours that I had been waiting without any message or a call from Drew, and I was getting impatient. I decided to make my way to our old house and rest till Drew was available. I could see a few cars in the driveway and some people moving stuff into the house. I quickly ran over to them and asked what was going on. They told me that they were moving into this house as of today. I was a little confused and told the lady that they might have been mistaken because we were still living here and that we would not be moving until the next 2 days. She looked at me suspiciously and told me that the house was completely empty, and today was the day when they were supposed to be moving in. She called Drew, who had transferred the lease to her, and to my surprise, he picked up her call. She told him that some weird lady has been talking nonsense. I snatched the phone from her and started talking to Drew without taking a breath, explaining to him what has been happening since morning. He told me to calm down and listen to him very carefully. He told me that he had given up the lease from today, and that he had moved into a new house all by himself, and left me with all the broken furniture to do whatever I pleased with it. I was about to say something when the line died. I stood there shocked at what just happened. I gave back the phone to her and was trying to process what Drew meant by all of that. I sat at a cafe trying to think what to do next. I did not have a house or a boyfriend, and I did not even have my belongings. Basically, I was screwed as I had no one to go to and nowhere to go. I tried calling Drew again and again, but I realized that he had blocked me and there was no way I could get in touch with him. I was going through my contacts to see if there was someone I could reach out to help me in this situation. I came across Liam's contact and was contemplating if I should send a message or give him a call. It had just been 2 months since I distanced myself from him, so I decided to try my luck and sent him a message asking him what he was up to. I was hoping and praying that he would reply to me and not be mad at me for what I had done to him. I was desperately waiting for a positive response from his end because that was the last resort I had. I did not have any savings because I spent most of my money on buying new stuff for the new house, and right now I didn't even have a house. I decided to stay at a motel for tonight and think of what to do tomorrow. Reddit, this is where I need your help. How can we move forward from this? Has anyone gone through something similar? If so, how did you rebuild trust and respect between you and your partner? How do I build trust and amend my relationship with Drew? I want to ensure that our relationship can heal and grow stronger, but I'm not sure where to start. Any advice or personal experiences would be greatly appreciated. I believe that open communication, patience, and consistent efforts to rebuild trust are key factors in repairing our relationship with Drew. Update. Thank you all for following up my story so far. As you all are well aware that I had been kicked out by my boyfriend of 2 years without even giving me a hint that he was going to do that. I have been staying at a motel for the past 2 days, and at this rate I will be running out of my money very soon. After 2 days of crying and sobbing, I finally have good news, which is that I received a text from Liam. He sounded very chirpy and happy to hear back from me after how I deserted him. He wanted to meet and catch up with me. We met at a cafe and I told him that I had broken up with Drew. Obviously, there was no way I was going to tell him that I had been kicked out. I lied to him that I couldn't stop thinking about him, and that was the reason why I broke up with Drew. Liam looked really happy with this information and immediately wanted to get back together. I was very satisfied by the amount of conviction I had in my story. I told him that I would like to move in with him if he had no issues. He was a little shocked by my upfront behavior, but I acted all lovey-dovey and told him that I would not want to spend even a single minute away from him. I know it was all cheesy, but I had to do what I could to get out of that motel and start living in an actual house. He told me that he had no problems with me moving in with him. He asked me to pack up my stuff and he would come to pick me up once I was ready. First off, I had nowhere he could pick me up from, and second, I had no stuff. I told him that it was not an issue and that I could manage on my own, but he was very adamant that he would want to pick me up and not let me carry heavy stuff. Well, that was very sweet and thoughtful of him, so I agreed. I told him that it would take me a few hours to pack my stuff and asked him to pick me up from my house in the evening. I kissed him and bid him goodbye and told him that I would see him in the evening. I left the cafe and started thinking how I should get things and make it look like they belonged to me. I had no other choice but to go on a shopping spree to pick up enough clothes and makeup so that Liam does not get a hint of what actually happened. I spent a while shopping for clothes, shoes, and makeup, and removing all the tags to make it look like these are used items that belonged to me. After I was sure that everything was ready, I packed them up and took a taxi to the house that I used to live in. I waited at a park nearby for Liam to show up so that I could leave with him. After waiting for more than 30 minutes, I decided to call him. After several rings, he finally picked up and asked me what's up. I told him that I had been waiting for him to pick me up. He started laughing very loudly and told me that he was surprised that I actually believed him. He kept making fun of me, telling me that I could not have been serious about waiting for him. After all that I had done to him, there was no way he was going to pick me up or even think of being on good terms with me. He told me that the only reason he replied to me and met me was because Drew told him everything about what had happened. He wanted to get his share of the revenge, and that was the only reason he met me. He knew that I had nowhere to go, and he wanted to make sure that he left me hanging just like the way I did. I kept reading that message again and again, thinking to myself how I could have been such a fool to have trusted Liam so easily. It was my fault that I blindly chose to trust a guy who I had ditched so heartlessly. I had spent enough money on the motel and the items that I had just bought to move in with Liam that I had no more money left. I had no other choice but to beg my parents to take me in till I am able to afford a decent place for myself. So guys, after this roller coaster ride, the only lesson I learned is that karma is a bitch. It can come to bite you in the back when you least expect it. I know that I had broken the trust of two guys, and that is the reason that I am in this mess today. So I would like to suggest to anyone out there not to make the same mistakes I have done and build trust in relationships and give your best in it. Words fail me, and at this point I'm struggling to come up with the right words to say what is on my mind. My husband doesn't even want to touch me at all. He doesn't want to look at me or even pick my calls. No wife wants her husband to treat her that way, and I am one of those women. I know what I did was and is still wrong. There's no excuse for that, and I don't think I'll ever recover from what I did to him. The fact that my touch grosses my husband out now is very depressing for me. It's not something I expected from him, and it's not a reaction I thought he'd have. I cheated on him with my personal coach, and now my daughter might grow up in a broken home. My name is Daniela, and I'm a 25-year-old gymnast. Gymnastics is something I love a lot, and I have done it for close to 5 years now. I am not an extreme professional, and I do not play at the national or international level. It is just something I love doing, and I play at many competitions in the city. I am able to earn money when I win those competitions, and sometimes I conduct training and charge people to learn from me. Being a gymnast has a lot of ethics, and there is a lot of training I have to do. I have to train almost all the time so that I can be able to perform and teach the people under me well. I am also a married man, and I have been married for close to 4 years now. I got married quite early because my husband caught my eye, Lowell. He proposed barely 1 year after we started dating, and I said yes without thinking about it because he is someone I really like. The name of my husband is Cole, and he is 28 years old. He is a dietitian and has been a dietitian even before we met. Our marriage is like a healthy marriage because both of us are very fit, and we like to eat very healthy. As a dietitian, Cole is very strict with the food we eat and everything that we take into our body. I also manage to stay healthy because I am married to him, and they are certain foods that he doesn't let me take. There are many times when I used to struggle with food even before I met him, because as a gymnast, there are many things that I have been told not to eat, but it was hard to keep up. I didn't even know a lot about the proper diet to take, and I did not want to spend money on hiring a dietitian. So when I met Cole, it was very easy for me to blend in and keep up with my diet. Is very good at what he does, and I am always thankful that I found him. But it seems like all of that is now a story for the past because there is nothing I can do at this point. I have used my own hands to put a very huge bridge between us, and I don't think I can honestly get rid of the guilt I feel right now. Barely 9 months ago, I gave birth to my first child, Nora. She's the sweetest soul, and she's the best thing that's ever happened to me. I love her so much, and I don't think I can ever stop loving her. But having Nora was not easy at all. I'm not even going to limit everything to only me and act like I was the only one that was stressed and tired. Even Cole went through a lot during my pregnancy, and it was a very tough time for us. I think the physical aspect wasn't even the toughest thing I had to go through. For me, it was the mental and emotional stress that I put myself through. When I say mental stress, I mean it literally. It was hard for a person like me who has been all about my physical fitness and maintaining a fit body to suddenly have to go through pregnancy. I didn't think it was going to be as hard as it was at all. In fact, I never expected it to take a toll on me. I knew I wanted children, and I still want children. Cole and I spoke about it a lot during the first weeks of our marriage, and we had decided to wait some years before we tried having a child. Just like we planned together, we waited for almost 2.5 years before I got pregnant. Seeing my body change every day was not easy for me at all. I just watched how my body changed from its normal state to fit the body of a pregnant woman. Not even Cole had been able to make me feel better. To his credit, I know he tried his best. He tried to calm me down and make me feel better, but I'd been so absorbed in my own thoughts that nothing he said made sense to me. It was also very difficult for me to have to change my usual diet. I'd always watched how I eat, and I never eat a lot. I didn't even eat junk before. But after getting pregnant, my body wanted a lot of weird things. And I've heard from a lot of people that it's a normal occurrence and that there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't think I was ever able to understand why I eat so much. I tried resisting my cravings, but my doctor strictly told me that none of my former diets mattered during pregnancy. It was very hard, but I had to get used to it, so I did. Cole was helpful in his own little ways. He still had work, and he was barely home. But I appreciated the fact that he tried to be present in any way he could. It meant a lot to me, and I never took it for granted. But I still had to go through the pregnancy myself, and yeah, it was not easy. Now that I remember it, I don't know if I want to laugh or cry. My reaction to seeing my body when I was 9 months pregnant was crazy. I thought I'd never be able to be a gymnast again, but back then, I found it easier to adapt. I wasn't as worried as I was before, and I didn't make a big deal out of it. Even Cole noticed that I was not as cranky as I was before. It took me a while, 9 months, to finally accept the pregnant body. I started loving it, but my delivery date was due by then. I didn't work all through my pregnancy because my line of work expected me to climb on poles, no room for error. My husband rejects my touch after I cheated, my personal coach jump. Gymnastics involves a lot of physical action and body flexibility. I couldn't do any of that during my pregnancy, and it was risky for me and the baby. I had to close down my training center and sit out all the competitions I usually engaged in. I knew that once I finally gave birth, I'd have a lot of work to do before I got my career back on track and got my normal life back. The birth of my child Nora wasn't complicated at all, and it was all thanks to my husband and my doctor. They made sure I ate right and did the right exercises. I fell in love with my daughter the moment I set my eyes on her, and so did my husband. But our problems began from that very moment. I can never dispute the fact that my daughter was my bundle of joy, and her birth brought me the largest amount of joy. But her birth also made me feel insecure all over again. My body after giving birth to her was not the same as my body before getting pregnant. I thought I'd magically go back to my old body, but that was not the case. I am an only child, and I lived with my dad all my life before getting married. I've never really been close to someone pregnant or had a lot of lectures about how pregnancy works. I was a first-timer with no previous knowledge. I know I had nurses and the internet to give explanations, but there's nothing like hearing from the horse's mouth live and direct and seeing everything for yourself. I thought I'd be an exception because I was a gymnast and I trained a lot. Well, that wasn't the case, and it came as a big shock to me. I almost got depressed again, but my daughter helped me stay strong. I breastfed Nora exclusively for 3 months before I started going non-exclusive. I stayed at home with her for some weeks after she turned 3 months before I told my husband I was ready to get back to work. That was where the genesis really began, guys. My husband agreed and stated that he had no problem with me getting back to work, but I had a lot of problems with getting back to my previous body shape. I was very insecure and I didn't want to get back to class like that. Back then, I used to be the one that told my students to stay fit and not let their body get the best of them because staying fit was very important in gymnastics. But for me to be the one going back without staying fit was not okay. I needed to be the example as a teacher, and even though they all knew I'd just given birth, I was still very insecure. The first day I was supposed to go, I refused to go and I stayed home all through. When Cole came back and noticed that I'd been at home all day, he asked me what the problem was and I told him that I wasn't confident in my body. The same thing happened 3 more times, and that's when I decided to seek advice from my fellow gymnasts that had given birth before. I was not ready to watch my career slip off my fingers because gymnastics was something that I'd done for a very long time. Most of the people I met told me it was totally normal, and that if I wanted to get my body back, all I needed to do was get a personal coach or go to the gym regularly. They asked me how fast I wanted to start work, and I told them that I wanted to start immediately because I needed to get back to work and I'd already wasted a lot of time. That's why they told me it was best to get a personal coach. They said it was faster to have someone coach me and keep an eye on my growth. They also recommended some good coaches to me, and I told them I'd get back to them after speaking to my husband. When Cole came back from work that day, I told him of my plans to get a personal coach in order to get my body back again. Cole asked me if I already had some options in mind, and I told him that they recommended some people already to me, but I was open to more suggestions. I asked him if he had people he wanted to introduce to me, and he said yes. I told him I had no problem with him choosing the coach for me. All I really wanted to do was get a coach that was good at his job and could help me stay fit. I didn't care who he was or who introduced me to him. I also guessed that Cole must have had his reasons for choosing the coach for me personally. I just thought that maybe he wanted to be familiar with the coach that would eventually train me. I initially wanted it to be a female coach because I was not really comfortable with a male coach seeing me in my insecure state. But it was hard to get a female coach, and most of them were not ready to work with a woman that just gave birth. They said it would be more difficult to work with a mother because they would go easy on her. I didn't get what kind of logic that was, but I had no choice. The only great coaches I knew were women, and they were either booked or not ready to work with a woman. Cole was finally able to find a coach for me after weeks of trying, and I was very grateful for that. I needed to start work immediately, so I was introduced to the coach barely 2 days after he was hired. His name is Landon, and I discovered that he was a 30-year-old fitness instructor. He also coached gymnasts that wanted to get back in shape. My husband seemed a little bit familiar with him, and that made me quite comfortable. I was still nervous because I put a lot of pressure on myself and wanted to put in a lot of work. Landon and I started out very professional, and we never even spoke except for physical fitness-related topics. Landon was very dedicated to his work, and I was very dedicated to getting my body back to its normal fitted form. London also had a lot of clients to attend to, and I was not the only one. Anytime I went back home after a session with Landon, I always gave my husband feedback and told him how stressful it was. Even though I had a lot of reasons to work hard and not slack off, it was hard for me to get used to exercising all over again. Do you know what it means to have a 1-year break? I was practically a rookie when it came to exercising, and it was a very weird feeling for me. I even found it hard to go back to my old diet, and that was one of the major challenges in my workout. Landon was very patient at first, but with time I could tell that he was also getting very tired of me complaining about several things instead of putting in work. One day, he decided to confront me and ask me why I was not putting in a lot of work. I apologized to him and told him that it was just difficult for me to keep up because of everything that had happened. He listened to me and did not interrupt me while I spoke. He just told me that I should not let everything that happened in the past get in the way of what I wanted to in the future. Landon told me that he knew most of the things he was saying were easier said than done, but it was important for me to have the right mindset or else I was just wasting my time and also wasting his time. He gave me a book that he said I should read in order to set my mindset right. I was very thankful, and I promised to read back that book because I was really desperate for good results. After reading the book, I told him that I finished it after 1 week. He then told me that it was important for me to use my daughter's birth as motivation, because it was important for me to have a mindset that enabled Nora to be my biggest motivation. That was not difficult for me because I really wanted to do things right and be able to let her know that our mother did not give up when things did not go her way. Landon and I became friends, and I enjoyed the stories of other people that struggled with the same thing I had been struggling with. It was refreshing to know that I was not going through that tough time alone because I used to feel guilty and think that I was overreacting. I started looking forward to our classes even though we only had classes 3 times in a week. I really enjoyed the moments when I would be praised for the progress I made and when I would be complimented. I didn't even realize that I started craving Landon's classes. It was not something that I was consciously aware of, and I just tried my best to keep on going to the class. I also reopened my gym training classes because I was slowly getting myself back together. I had regained my confidence to a certain level, and I had been ready to get back to work. I knew that I was not fully there yet, but I just wanted to put one foot in and try my best first. Cole kept asking me why I was not done with the personal training, and I told him that it was because I didn't want to slack off when I stopped. Cole started getting very irritated with the personal classes, and even though he did not tell me directly, I knew that he was no longer happy that I kept on having the personal classes with Landon. I didn't expect to get such a reaction out of Cole at all. I used to think that he was perfectly fine with me having a coach that would help me regain my fitness. But his behavior after I reopened my training center told me that was not his plan at all. I just concluded that I had been seeing things, and I decided that I would not say anything until Cole told me what he felt by himself. I didn't have to wait for long at all because Cole eventually called me one day and told me he had to speak to me. I don't think it was a coincidence that he chose to speak to me on the exact day that I was supposed to go and see the coach. I had no choice than to cancel the meeting that day and tell the coach that I had come down with a fever. I asked Coley what was so important that he could not tell me the night before, even when we had slept in the same bed. He just brushed off my accusation and told me that he had forgotten to tell me the night before. He told me that he felt it was about time that I stopped seeing the personal coach. I was really surprised to hear that from him because I did not know that he had been thinking about that. I asked him what his reasons were and why he suddenly felt that way, and he told me that his thoughts were not sudden and that he had been thinking about it for a very long time. He asked me if it was possible that I will stop 2 weeks from that conversation, and I told him that it was not possible. I had a very big fear of stopping and then getting back to slacking off. I tried to explain my concerns to Cole, but nothing I said made sense to him. He said his words were final and that he did not plan on going back on his words. I was very surprised to see Cole act in that authoritative manner. We actually got into an argument, and he told me he was not ready to have his wife continuously train with a personal coach that was a male. The funny thing is that nothing had happened between Landon and I during that period yet. I didn't even cheat on Cole before he started getting strict. Cole told me that people were talking, and he was tired of making excuses for me. I tried to make him understand where I was coming from, but he shunned me down and told me his decision was final. Even though I was not really happy with his decision, I decided that it was best to let it go and not say anything. I agreed to stop my personal classes with the coach on the condition that I had 2 more months to have my personal classes. Cole was not ready to agree at first, but when I told him that was the only way I would stop, he agreed. I was very upset that he had been suspecting me and that he wanted to cut my personal classes short. I didn't get why he wanted to be the one to dictate how long I did my own workouts. Even though he had been supportive to an extent, I was the only one who could understand what I actually felt, and he was just an observer. I told the coach that we only had 2 months to train together before I stopped coming to the classes. Landon asked me why I suddenly made the decision, and I told him that my husband was the one who decided on my behalf. Landon decided that it was first I started coming for my training classes more regularly, in order to train as much as I could before the 2 months elapsed. I felt really frustrated that I had to end the classes, and I did not keep my thoughts away from the coach. Never! He told me not to worry about it and that he could understand where my husband was coming from. We spoke more during our training classes and found time to discuss the next step. It felt weird for me that after each training class, I always felt quite awkward. I literally never wanted to leave the training classes even after we were done. That continued for a few more weeks, and Landon noticed. He tried playing it off at first, but I think I noticed it and took it as a cue for a green light. He started making funny remarks and bringing up conversations outside of fitness. There were times when he would randomly compliment my body and flirt with me. I don't want to lie, so I will tell the truth. I never stopped him from flirting with me, and there were times when I flirted back. Barely 5 days after we started flirting with each other, he kissed me after one of our classes. I kissed him back, and we ended up making out for hours. He asked me if I wanted to follow him to his house, and I said yes. I wasn't even thinking, and I ended up sleeping with him that day. I slept off and woke up almost 2 hours later. I realized that it was already 6 p.m. when I woke up, and I was supposed to be at the house already. I couldn't believe that I had cheated without alcohol influence. I did it without being drunk. Landon tried convincing me to stay the night, but I refused. I told him that I just couldn't continue whatever we had going on. He was very upset, and then he asked me a very important question. If you're not ready, then why did you lead me on? I couldn't deny the fact that I led him on, and I apologized for that. I told him that I just couldn't continue to cheat on my husband. He was very furious, but I left his house after saying that to him. Ever since I started training with Landon and going to train my students, my mother was the one who babysitted Nora for me. I decided to sleep at my mother's place that day, and I called Cole to tell him I would not be returning home. Cole was surprised because all through our marriage I'd never asked to sleep outside the house before. He asked me where I was, and I assured him that I was at my mother's place. He didn't question me after that. He ended the call, and then I switched off my phone. I slept in my mother's hands with my daughter that night, and I could tell that she sensed that something was wrong. She just didn't want to say it out loud. The next day, my brother practically sent me out of her house. She thought I ran to her because I was having issues with my husband, so she didn't want to keep me from resolving my issues with him. I tried to make her understand that it wasn't the case, but all my pleas fell on deaf ears. I had to just leave her house and go back home to meet Cole. When I got home, he was surprisingly at home. That was very unusual because he usually went to work early. And I asked him if there was any problem, but he just told me that he had been tired, and that was why he made the decision to skip work that day. I was not really happy about that, because the last thing I wanted to do after cheating on my husband with my personal coach was see him around the house all day. I didn't want to raise his suspicions by acting like it was a problem, so I just went to the bedroom with Nora. I had to give her a bath because we left my mother's place without taking a bath since we were in quite a hurry. I got her dressed up, and then she told me she felt sleepy, so I read her some books before she slept off. After putting Nora to bed that day, I found it very hard to sleep. I wanted to sleep just so I could ignore my husband. But sleep didn't come at all, and I kept thinking about everything that happened with Landon. While I was busy thinking, Cole walked into the bedroom and he asked to have a conversation with me. He sat on the bed with a cigarette in hand. He didn't light it yet, and I could tell it was because of Nora's presence. I was aware that Cole had the habit of smoking whenever he was stressed. In a year it was possible he would only smoke a total of 8 times. So when I saw the cigarette in his hand, I knew that there had to be something wrong. I was worried, but I didn't suspect that he knew I had been cheating on him. By that time, I still had 2 weeks before I finished the personal classes with Landon. Cole asked me how that was going, and I just told him that I no longer wanted the classes. He asked me why, and I just said that I finally found my confidence. My main reason is because I didn't want to continue seeing Landon every day, knowing fully well that he had feelings for me and I had cheated on my husband with him. I didn't want to make the complicated situation more complicated, so I chose to choose the easy route. I asked Cole what he wanted to speak to me about, and he just asked me why I slept outside the house. I told him I'd missed my mother and just wanted to keep her company for some time. Cole didn't say anything for a very long time, and I didn't know what had been going through his mind. I tried to act nonchalant by acting like I was suddenly sleepy. I asked him if there was anything else he wanted to say, and he said no. I ended up pretending to sleep after that. I gathered my daughter in my hands and cuddled her. Cole later left the room after that. He came back some minutes later and dropped a note on the nightstand. I pretended to be asleep, but after I heard the front door open and close, I checked the note. He just wrote in the note that he wanted to go grab some fresh air. I was relieved to see that he left the house. I had my bath, then changed my clothes. I just had some noodles for breakfast before going back to sleep. I actually slept at that time. 1 week after I cheated on Cole and discovered that he had no clue, I thought he'd never find out, so I wanted to forget the incident and make my marriage work. I didn't want to lose him, and I didn't want Nora to live without both her parents in the house. I grew up without a dad, and I didn't want to be the one to make my daughter go through the same. Cole was hardly at home during those 7 days, so it was hard to get together with him. But I decided to spice things up with him during the weekend. After putting Nora to bed, I got dressed in a very skimpy nightgown and lit candles in the room. I feel like a fool now that I think about how stupid I had been. I wanted to be extra and set the mood just like I'd seen in some of the videos I'd watched. It was just my way of having fun and doing something right for both of us. I didn't get to work for 1 week because I had to stay home and think about everything that had happened. I came to the conclusion that I wanted to save my marriage, so I had to go through all those means. When Cole came into the bedroom, he was very shocked and his eyes widened in surprise. I blushed a lot because I had never done anything like that in my life. I walked up to him and spread my hands around his shoulders, but Cole pushed me away. I was very shocked to see what he did. I didn't know what to expect when I lit up the room and got into a skimpy nightwear, but I certainly didn't expect my husband to act the way he acted with me. I was embarrassed, but I tried to act strong and not show it. I asked Cole why he behaved that way, but he didn't respond, so I tried to walk up to him and touch his hair. He always liked it when I touched his hair, but Cole rejected my touch and pushed me again. It was hard to process getting rejected by my husband. I won't even lie. I tried touching him again, but he rejected my touch again. Instead of pushing me that time, he grabbed both of my hands and twisted them behind me. Guys, I actually got scared and tried to run away because I didn't understand why he was behaving like that. Cole looked into my eyes and started shaking his head. He was so angry that I could see the veins that were lined up in his neck. "So you cheated on me with your personal coach, and then you want to touch me. You think you have that right?" Those were the words Cole said to me. I was very shocked to hear that he had been aware of the truth. He told me I made a fool out of him and that I made him a laughingstock just because he didn't write off my feelings and cared for me. I started crying like a fool because I didn't know what to do. I dropped on my knees and started apologizing to him. Cole wanted to yell at me, but we heard our daughter crying in her room. She had woken up. Cole just bit his lip and told me to expect the divorce papers soon. That was all he said before leaving the house. I have not seen Cole since that day at all. It's been 8 days and he hasn't even come to the house to see his daughter. My mother has been the one coming to the house, and she has tried her best to call him, and he has blocked the both of us. I got so tired that I just started typing away on the computer as my way of dealing with everything that happened. I saw that Reddit is one of the best places to share stories like this, so I decided to share it here. Update. Nothing changed, guys. Cole still rejected my touch after he came back 14 days later. I didn't see him for a total of 22 days. He just came back and handed me the divorce papers. Then he asked me to pack out of his house. My mother was at the house at that time, and she tried to beg him on my behalf, but nothing she said was able to get him to change his mind. He had made up his mind, and nothing I said was able to change that. I asked him how he found out, but he ignored me and chased me out of the house after packing my things. I told him that if I left the house, I'd be leaving with Nora, and that I will not let him take her. He told me he had no problem with me taking her with me. He was busy with work, so he couldn't just leave her at the house. I was very relieved to hear that, and I left without complaining. I told my mother to take Nora home with our belongings. I had to go to Landon's place and ask him what had happened and why Cole had a big injury on his shoulder. When I asked Landon what happened, he told me that 2 days after we slept together, Cole had rushed into his house and picked up a fight with him. He said Cole asked him if he slept with me. I was surprised that Cole would suddenly ask that. I was suspicious and accused Landon of telling Cole the truth. He denied that and told me that Cole asked him if I had slept over at his place. That was when I realized that Cole must have thought I lied when I said I was at my mother's place, and since he had been suspicious of me and the coach before, he suspected him. I then understood why Landon had not been home frequently for a full week after I slept with Landon. He found out the truth and chose to avoid me. Landon also told me that he told Cole the truth after they punched each other. I was very angry with Landon, and I accused him of being a snake. He told me that was his way of paying me back for leading him on. Landon also had an injury, but I didn't care. I just left his house and warned him never to reach out to me. Cole and I got divorced 1 month ago, and it's been very difficult. Nora keeps asking me where her data is, and my guilt just keeps on rising to the extreme. I can't believe that my bad decisions will make my daughter grow up in a broken home. I never wanted that for her, but I ended up being the one to ruin the home for her. I'm wrong and I'm guilty. I should never have compromised everything we had in our marriage. I should have stopped going to my workout sessions the moment I realized that I was getting attracted to the coach. I should have never flirted with the coach. There's no day that I don't regret everything I did, but I just have to accept the consequences of my actions and focus on Nora. I just pray she doesn't resent me when she grows up.